right. Next up, we have Sharon. Sharon is currently a doctoral student here at Cornell Tech, and she will be presenting towards addressing ableism on social media.
Great. Everybody can hear me and see my screen, and there are no blocks just to be aware of.
You're
Yep.
good to go.
Good to go. Okay. Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Sharon Hung. I'm a final year PhD candidate in information science at Cornell Tech. I'm really excited to share my body of work moving towards addressing ableism on social media. And with the nature of this topic, I'd like to give a quick content warning that I will be sharing detailed anecdotes of hate, harassment, and ableism. So if you need to leave the Zoom room for a moment, please do what you need to take care of yourself. So, in the public health literature, we know that disabled people are 1.5 more times more likely to experience violence and abuse than non-disabled people alike. And in an increasingly digital world, abuse has become tech facilitated, where attackers exploit technology like social media platforms, GPS tracking, and AirTags to enact harm. And tech facilitated abuse can escalate to in person harms like stalking or physical violence. And despite the size of the global disability population, comprising of 16% of the world's population, and this known statistic of their heightened vulnerability, there's been limited research on this intersection of disability and digital safety research. And so my goal is to make digital technology safer and more inclusive with and for the disability community. I specifically work at this intersection of human computer interactions, accessibility, and digital safety to really examine how these digital systems facilitate harm and also designing interventions with the community to find ways that technology can mitigate these harms. And by with the community, I mean like using research methods where we're capturing the disability experience. I've conducted participatory design workshops where we involve disabled people as designers of reimagining how might technology better serve them. And my research aims to develop this foundational knowledge and ensuring digital systems better serve disabled users, and in turn, building systems to be more just and safe for all. And so in today's talk, I'll highlight some key takeaways from my dissertation work that specifically examines how do disabled social media users experience ableism and how might we begin to address it. The first study that I've done is to understand the subtle forms of ableism called ableist microaggressions. In this study, we call it nothing micro about it because we actually found that these subtle forms of microaggressions did have an impact on social media users' behaviors and also well-being. Across 20 interviews with disabled users, I've created 12 different types of ableist microaggressions. 10 of these types are direct quotes to sort of like mirror the manifestation of what the microaggression looked like, and also to preserve the visceral impact and the nuance. For example, you're so inspirational was one type, or where's your mom? Or that's not a disability. And so understanding these online forums also just helps us paint a picture of what are the ableist microaggressions that exist today. For example, this work was actually used to help design materials sent to teachers in identifying ableist microaggressions in the classroom. I'll kind of go through one specific example of an ableist microaggression, which is can you have sex? For example, P11 said, random strangers inquire about my sexual function. They see a person in a wheelchair and they think if their reproductive system works properly. And it's weird, but it's happened several times. I have had conversations with strangers on social media, and it just makes me stop and think you can ask me any question in the world. Why is that the first thing you want to know? And so P11 is explaining the context in which this is particularly harmful and a clear form of denial and invasion of privacy, and frankly, just inappropriate. And so these microaggressions have a long-term impact. For P16, receiving microaggressions have actually made him a more passive user over time and has actually caused him to self-censor himself. For example, he said, I do like other people's posts and scroll through my feed. If I post private pictures on my Facebook, I actually make it private to reduce discrimination and prevent unwanted questions on my vision impairment. And so over time, he's actually changing the way that he interacts on social media to prevent from receiving a microaggression in the first place. And that meant kind of slowly not disclosing aspects about their disability. So after doing this work on understanding microaggressions, it really made sense to think about what are the overt forms of ableist hate. Digital safety research has shown that content creators in particular are more at risk of hate because of their public visibility and also mostly like they have usually a high following. And so I thought we could start there of understanding how do disabled create content creators experience ableist hate and harassment on social media. So, from talking to 50 disabled creators through surveys, conducting interviews with 20 of those creators, I developed a taxonomy of ableist speech that cut across kind of all the data points that we had from the study. We have five ableist categories with specific ableist types. The categories include slurs and derogatory language, violent and eugenics related speech, questioning ability and denying access, mocking and invalidating disability identity, and also objectifying the disabled body. I'll just go into one specific type and also kind of highlight how extreme these cases are, especially for disabled content creators. So one type we call faking disability type, and I'll start out by sharing this quote from P1. So she says, the harasser is saying, I'm disabled, and I can tell she doesn't have the disability she says she has. And they've come up with fake articles about my syndrome. And one of them was like, people with this syndrome die before the age of 16. The harasser says, see, she's supposed to be dead. And these tactics of combining medical misinformation with these accusations that they're faking their disability make it more believable. This inflicts damage on the content creator's reputation, their credibility, and also can lead to subsequent hate when other users are reading and believing the medical misinformation and can also kind of dogpile on more hate, specifically with that harasser who's explaining that. And similar to microaggressions, hate and harassment has an impact on users' well-being. And something that I want to call out is platforms are not neutral in this experience. Platforms actually exacerbate the harm. And so I'll start out by talking about one content creator who shared this with us. She was like, I was told that I was faking my disability for attention and taking away resources from the quote, real disabled people who needed it. This impacted my mental health, making me feel low and anxious. I worried that everyone secretly thought that too. I reported to Instagram, but Instagram said that it didn't breach their policy. It makes me more worried about posting online. And so, because the platform did not do anything about it, this creator felt not supported by the platform in experiencing these hateful harassment. And so, something that I want to highlight here is that there are instances when technology breaks down or is not supporting disabled creators when thinking about their safety when it comes to ableist hate. So, I'll give an example similar to kind of this prior quote of like, let a platform does not take down ableist hate as hateful. For example, let's just say, and we've had instances of this shared from our creators of like, the platform doesn't take a ableist slur after the creator reported it. And what happens is that this can lead to an emotional harm. In some ways, the platform not removing the ableist speech kind of reaffirms a harasser speech. It has led to sometimes internalized ableism, where the user begins to believe in the hateful content and believes that it's okay to say online. And then creators would put in a lot of labor. They would have to themselves individually delete the hateful comments because they know that they're responsible for creating a inclusive and safe environment for their followers. Some creators would crowdsource other users to report on their behalf in hopes that the platform would actually take down the ableist hate themselves. And so over time, through instances when platforms don't support creators, the emotional harms, and the added labor, creators built resilience. And what resilience looks like is them avoiding reading the comments or also self-censoring themselves. And so I just want to highlight how, platforms do play some sort of role. And in our case, we found platforms exacerbating the harm and not supporting disabled creators. And so I'll share this final study where we are thinking about, well, how might we design personal moderation to actually address hate? And in this case, we started to think about this idea around personalized moderation. And this study involved working with design focus groups with disabled social media users. We actually had a combination of like users and creators and thinking about what this personalized moderation tool could look like. And so, as you know, the prior work and what I've talked about has established, platform moderations typically don't address ableist speech. And so there's this idea that what if we could use personal moderation? And personal moderation is basically platform features that allow individual users to customize the content that they view or in this specific case don't want to view. So if a creator doesn't want to view ableist hate, maybe they could set up that filter themselves to prevent themselves from being triggered. And with the progression of AI-based personal moderation is emerging. For example, Blue Sky, which is an alternative social media platform to X, deployed a personal moderation system where you can hide, warn, or show different types of harmful content like nudity and misrepresentation. And AI-based personal moderation to filter identity-based hate actually has been, like Intel actually has a version of this. So on the slide, I have a screenshot of Intel's filter. Um, Next to this slider filter, it says ableism and body shaming. Underneath that, it says hateful speech about people with disabilities and specific physical conditions. And on the right-hand side, there's a slider that goes from none to some to most and to all. And the goal is for the user to kind of self-select or decide how much this filter should tune out in terms of ableism. And you might be wondering, well, what does it mean for a filter to tune out some ableism or most ableism? What is the difference between those two? And so this is something that we really wanted to get disabled users' actual opinions on this of like, how do they perceive a tool like this and how do they reimagine this tool to better support their needs? And so, like I said, it's really unclear how usable and effective these tools are. And to begin to to think about this, we conducted a design focus group study with design probes. And these design probes are different UI interfaces to kind of get creators and users thinking about how might this filter look like for them, and also how might we think about personalized moderation for specifically ableist speech. For the sake of time, I'll just highlight one key finding here. So, participants did like some sort of toggle on and off of like, I just don't want to see any ableist content versus I want to see all of it. Because the toggle was kind of seen as like reduced labor, like it would be really easy for them to kind of set up. Toggles are also just more accessible for instead of like sliders. And then also we found that participants actually really like this idea of toggling based off of the types of ableist speech, which is inspired by the work that we've done and the outcome of the taxonomy of ableist hate that I kind of shared earlier. And so the reason why is because participants really appreciated the fact that if they could filter by ableist types, this allows them to specifically filter content that they find specifically triggering and harmful. For example, P13 said patronizing comments kind of get to be more than just straight up hate speech. The comment might not be as ableist, but they might not be the lowest impact. And so that was something that was really interesting here of like if you only have a filter that is filtering what might be objectively, let's just say, the most harmful or ableist, it actually might not be the most harmful for the participant. And so if you have these concrete filters, we're really thinking about how can a user have like autonomy over kind of communicating specific types of ableist speech that they find personally triggering or harmful given their lived experience of having a disability. So overall, I kind of went through a quick high level of like my dissertation work. My goal is to really make digital technology safer and more inclusive with and for the disability community. To really understand digital safety, it's really important to consider how it's shaped by identity, context, and power. And if we don't include disabled people in these conversations, these technologies risk reinforcing existing inequalities. And I'm also, as just like a plug, I'm also on the job market this year. I'm my final PhD student. I'm applying to both industry and academic jobs. So if you know of a role or of an opportunity that can allow me to continue moving towards this goal, I'd love to hear it. Thank you, and I'll take any questions if we have time. If not, I'll put my email in the comment section, and I'm happy to take questions later on.
Yes, thank you so much, Sharon. There is a question in the chat, but unfortunately, we do not have time
Yeah.
for you to answer it verbally. So yes, please feel free to respond to Dr. Pass's question in the chat, as well as people. Please feel free to also follow up with Sharon via her information that she will put in the chat for us. Thank you, Sharon, for putting your LinkedIn and also your email address in the chat. So we are now complete with our relatively shorter talks for